as well.
I do. This is why you're here, so that I don't forget to do important things. Vera, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this wonderful, brilliant film, The People's Joker. I would like to just kind of jump in, and I know you've answered this question like ad nauseum.
All my questions have already been taken with your interviews.
Yes.
Yeah. Like we're just going to talk about cat videos and like your favorite like bread recipes.
Yes. We're going to crib off of everyone else and then ask about cats. But no, I know you've talked about this. I know you've talked about this ad nauseum, but could we touch on the TIFF incident and sort of the reaction to that, and TIFF's then reaction to supporting you as well?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am so sick of talking about it, but I'm finally in a place where I can actually I have perspective on it now. I think for so long, like even when we were like starting our theatrical run, it didn't feel good to talk about it because it really hadn't settled in yet that the movie was out there. Like I was still going into that theatrical run thinking that at any minute I'd hear from David Zaslav, and which is a name I'm technically not allowed to say. But anyway,
I don't like
I mean, I like basically, and I think the reason I'm like more comfortable talking about it now too is just like I said, like I have that perspective, like, you know, we got this letter from Warner Brothers that, you know, Warner Brothers has never spent any money trying to bury my movie. They've only really sent like angry letters and angry emails and you know, strongly worded intimidation correspondences. And the first one I got was the night before we were supposed to premiere at TIFF, which was, I mean, so intense for obvious reasons. I think namely just being like, I think we were out celebrating that night. Just that like we had our first press day and we're like, cool, I guess it's happening. Like we're going to be screening the movie tomorrow. And then I got like that call that, you know, I wouldn't even say that I was dreading it just because I always assumed that they were going to ignore us. Like, it always seemed to me like if they had paid attention to me at all, it would have just given us a lot more attention, which it did. But yeah, I was like devastated that night. And thankfully, you know, I'd never been to a film festival before TIFF. Like that was the first time I had ever, like, forget even just having a movie in a festival. I'd never attended a film festival, and TIFF is just like one of the craziest experiences you could go through as a filmmaker and just as a film goer. Like it's so fancy, it's huge. You know, the year that we were there was the same year that The Fabelmans premiered there and The Whale, and like it was a really kind of big deal that we had gotten in. Like my first day there, I walked into an elevator and Werner Herzog was just there, and it was like, what the, like it was crazy, just this like moment of like reality breaking. No, like you don't even think of him as like a real person, like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well, and because like I was there, you know, with like the team of people that I had brought with, and Nathan Foston, who plays the Penguin in The People's Joker, was also with me, and he's exactly like his character in the movie. The part was really written for him, so he often says things that are dumb. And the moment I saw Werner Herzog, I was like, I gotta say something before Nate does, because whatever Nate says is gonna be just like stupid. Like he'll bring up the Mandalorian or something. Yeah, exactly. So I just was like, okay, I'm just gonna be gracious. Like I'm a huge Werner Herzog fan, so I was just like, it's so amazing to see you here, And his response was, "Here, I'm just a rumor," and then he like disappeared. This,
Oh,
yeah.
that's
So
the
I
most
had
Werner
this like,
Herzog thing.
yeah. No, it's so
Yeah.
his response was just so mystical and like exactly what you would expect. Like I think like the whole lead up to that night of getting that letter was this like, I don't know, like I had spent years at that point in my bedroom making this movie and kind of not really knowing, kind of just expecting like a few of my friends to watch it, you know, like at a warehouse party or something. Like I didn't really, and I had worked in TV for 10 years, so I wasn't jaded, but like I needed moments like that where I was just like experiencing the magic of cinema, and I really got that at TIFF. And so when I got that letter, it was like it was devastating, and I honestly, if I hadn't been surrounded by you know, my manager and my producer on the movie, Joey Lyons, really were the only ones that kind of built me up, because like I wasn't ready to like pull the movie in that instant, but I was ready to like crawl into a hole and die. And you know, we, like I said, we had all been celebrating, so a few of us were pretty inebriated at that point, and I just remember being on the streets of Toronto, like, and I was pretty much in full Joker gear, but like I busted my zipper on my leather pants, so like I was very exposed, both emotionally and physically and literally. And Joey just like, he got in my face, and my producer was just like, you know what? We're here. We all got passports for this. We made this movie. They're not gonna stop us. And tomorrow we're gonna screen the movie wherever we can, even if it's in one of our fucking hotel rooms. Sorry for swearing if I'm not allowed to do that.
More the better.
Okay. And you know what? We're not gonna let them push you around, because you are not just a rumor, Vera Drew. And like he called back to that Werner thing, and it was like I just started bawling.
Full circle.
And it was the first time, I think, in my life that I really was able to just look around and go like, I have people who like want, like, really care about me in my career and like this piece of art we made. And it was really that like motivated us to just basically go to TIFF and just like, because the letter we got from Warner Brothers was pretty much like, they basically said like, you need to show this to anybody who wants to screen the movie or buy the movie. And so we had to tell TIFF.
Right.
Of course, I think my first response was like, do we really need to? And it's like, yeah, no, we literally need to. We're now past the point of being punk. And you know, so
Right.
we went to Cameron Bailey, who was the head of TIFF, and Peter Kaplowski, who was our programmer at the Midnight Madness section of TIFF, and basically just showed them the letter, and they were like, okay, well, let's see what we can do. Like, either way, we're gonna screen, you know, and in that like 24-hour period, because I can't stress enough, this was like less than 24 hours before I was supposed to like get on stage and introduce the movie. We ended up heisting the DCP, the like file we were gonna play to play the movie, because we didn't know if like it would be stuck behind some sort of vault. So we did that. Like, and TIFF just like Peter Kaplowski specifically spent that entire day just trying to get through to somebody at Warner Brothers, and eventually got through. It's like that scene in Magnolia where Philip Seymour Hoffman is like trying to get through to Frank T.J. Mackey like all day, and it's like, this is the point in the movie where a guy is like trying to tell you, you know, reconnect with your son, he's dying or whatever. Like, Peter was doing that, but about a trans Joker movie. And he finally got to he got in touch with the head of Warner Brothers Canada, and I think, like, you know, just through like a conversation, it was just like, okay, like we're gonna do this. Like we sold all these tickets, and you know, like it's protected by parody. Like it's clearly a movie you guys would never make.
Right.
So we feel confident that we can screen it, and like it's like I said, like at the beginning of this huge answer, I think I feel better talking about it now, because I can really see just how much like everybody showed up around me in my moment of like complete and utter despair. And that was really the through line, you know, thereafter. Just the entire like festival programmers, the entire genre community really always believed in me and believed in like what we were doing with the movie, which is all you could really ask for as like a filmmaker, like who had never made a feature film before. And so I'm so thankful that like we really were at the right place in the right time. And I mean, that next day the movie went viral on Twitter. Like it was way more people found out about it because Bugs Bunny had a stick up his ass. So
Right. I mean, I remember hearing about like what happened at TIFF by listening to, I think, like the people at Film Comment talk about the incident like the next day. And I'm like, well, this has to be good press at that point, right? As long as it gets screened out there. Like I said, I'm sorry. I just, I know you've answered that how many times, but what I think is kind of a shame is that not everyone knows, right? I mean, the kind of origin story of the People's Joker. So, yeah.
So how did WB
thank you for the
deliver
opportunity to.
Oh. No, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. What? I was just gonna say, I'm thankful for the opportunity to talk about it, just because like I don't get to talk about it in that full detail either that often. Yeah. Like it's you know, I think the times where it hasn't felt good is like when, you know, it was like misreported that we got a cease and desist. Like we were never brought into litigation. We never got any formal anything. And just, you know, like it's funny because like if I was like 15 years old and, you know, wanted to make movies, I would like look at what happened and go like, that's the coolest, like most punk rock thing I've ever fucking heard. But yes, nobody wants to be like a band filmmaker on their first movie. So no, I don't mind talking about it, because I could talk about it with nuance and a little bit more heart now.
Great.
How did WB? I mean, this is maybe a silly, superfluous question, but how did WB deliver the letter to you? Because then I'm picturing it like that big red hairy monster, like two of those guys just came up, and like Elmer Fudd delivered you an envelope and just like looked and stared at you.
I wish it was that cute. I mean, it was just an email to UTA and my manager, and yeah, it was also, I actually read the whole letter in our DVD. We have an interactive menu on the Blu-ray, and I read the whole letter. I've never read it because I think I'm technically not allowed to, but whatever. I like read the whole thing on there, and like that was my first time really looking at it like after, you know, a year or so. And I think the thing that stood out to me the most about it was just like there was no name on it, like of even who it was coming from. It was just this like faceless corporation, and I don't know, it like really highlights for me, you know, like I don't know, like I on some level, you know, I guess I'm a capitalist. Like I've wanted to make money off of this movie, and you know, like I'm selling DVDs and T-shirts and shit. I'd sell action figures if I could, but that would probably definitely get me sued. And they're hard to make. But
right.
Yeah, like
I take more time.
I think like yeah, exactly. We have to make a mold. I think like the thing that this whole experience really like just highlighted for me was like like we give these corporations way too much power, and they get to just really hide behind this like faceless idea of what a company even is. And the fact that we like let something like Warner Brothers or Disney or any of these companies, there's a handful that I'm not naming because I don't want to burn bridges with those ones too. But we let them be in charge of film preservation and all these IPs and stuff, and there's a real tragedy to that because that human element to it is completely missing.
Was there ever a moment, once all the dust settled, was there ever a moment where someone from WB or DC kind of gave you a wink or a thumbs up, said good job, or I mean, I know it's probably unlikely, but I mean, has there ever been a moment where like we were just trying to scare you kind of moment and
but we love your movie.
But we love your movie, yeah.
Not anybody on the, definitely not from the legal department. But I know, like the Harley Quinn writers room like is obsessed with the movie, and I'm friends with a handful of them. Like I was taking meetings at Warner Brothers while I was making the movie, and I was always talking about this movie, like in the lead up to it. Like I was always like, hey, I'm making this thing over here, and anytime I'd tell an executive, they'd be like, yeah, it sounds cool. Like, can't wait to see it. And
no one once said, hey, we might be angry.
Yeah, no, nobody ever did. And I think just because like it really was just like, oh, it's such a stupid movie to get mad about. Like, I get it. It's good. Like, it turned out good. I'm a good actor in it. I sing beautifully. It's well shot and directed. It looks beautiful. It's groundbreaking as far as DIY independent cinema goes. It's going to create an entirely new generation of filmmakers. And it's a movie that is really fucking stupid. Like, it's annoying. It's rude. There's a character named Suicide Cop in it. Like, it's a really dumb movie for $1 billion corporation to get mad about. Like, it just is. Like, so that was the thing that was always shocking to me, and I think kind of just like everybody in the industry, especially, especially my agents. I don't know why I keep mentioning them so much. I guess just because like they were such a factor in this. Like the whole lead up to us releasing the movie back in 2022 and like trying to start our festival run. It was like that meme of like all the like Spider-Mans pointing at each other, where it's just like we all were like, this person says it's cool, this person says it's cool, and like, yeah.
So you've mentioned punk and DIY a few times during this conversation. This film is really kind of a collage and pastiche, and at times a construction paper cutouts. Was that intentional? Were you conscious of that kind of mix of materials and technique, or did some of it just kind of come up by happenstance as you were doing, like happy mistakes wise?
The plan was always to really have this like mixed media aesthetic and employ as many different animation styles as possible, kind of to complement the fact that it was also like pulling, as you said, like a lot of different like pastiches from pre-existing DC things and just genre movies in general. Like the movie really is like, there's so much of it that's just like ripping off Goodfellas and like Casino and stuff. Like, and that was just because like Todd Phillips rips off Taxi Driver in his, so I wanted to like go to 90s Scorsese in mine. And like, I think the like mixed media approach was like an early idea because the movie really did start as like I tried to sort of make a found footage movie. Like I was going to re-edit Todd Phillips' Joker and sort of just make like a big feature-length experimental film. And as I was doing that, it was like, well, this would definitely get me sued. And this is like also like going to take so much time. I'd rather just like finally make a movie. Like I had wanted to make a movie since the time I was like 6 years old. So I went to my co-writer Brie LaRose, who really I couldn't have put the script together without her, and was kind of just like, let's really write a movie that is kind of impossible to shoot, like kind of like really write a movie that like is like has the scope of like a big budget comic book movie. I think it's why sometimes I get a little annoyed with people on Twitter, and I mean, which is just a sentence that could stop right there. But specifically,
shocking.
yeah, the like sometimes I'll see people say like the movie looks like shit, or the movie like it looks like a nostalgia critic video or whatever, and I'm always like, it's A, it doesn't, and B, like it's a movie where like a fucking mentally ill recovering drug addict trans woman was able to make a Batmobile chase. Like we really knew what we were doing. Like we were trying to shoot for a story that a first time filmmaker wouldn't put on screen. Like I didn't want it to feel like how most queer movies feel, like where they're a lot slower and they kind of like I wanted it to feel like a big genre movie. So the mixed media approach was always like to sort of capture that like found footage remix aesthetic and just like accomplish that. And I put out a call. I mean, speaking of Twitter, the only good thing that ever happened on Twitter was I put out a call to anybody who wanted to help us make the movie, whether it was like artists and actors and musicians and stuff. And I was kind of only expecting like 12 or so people, and it was like literally like 10 times that. Like I woke up to an inbox just like 200 people, like all who not only like wanted to just see this movie, but like were like, I've wanted to make a Batman movie my whole life, like let's do this. And so like I had this just like huge diverse group of aesthetics to kind of pull from. And I think like when that moment hit, it was kind of like, okay, I have to do this. Like I can't think of any filmmaker in the history of cinema that's ever had this opportunity to like work with this many people and on this level and in this way. And I think like going into the process, it was pretty intimidating just because like it is like a lot of different styles. Like we do stop motion, we do 2D animation, both in the style of like the Bruce Timm Batman animated series aesthetic, and there's like a love scene in the middle of the movie that's like very like twee kind of anime like animation, and then very experimental stuff too. And like I really kind of just wanted to prove to myself as a fan of like genre movies and like experimental film that it was something that would work. And I think there were a few precedents that I was able to turn to. I think one of them being Natural Born Killers, just because that's a movie where like you'll have like one shot will be like 16 millimeter film, and then the next will be like video, and then the next will be like 35 mil. So like, and your brain is able to just process it because we've destroyed our brains with the internet and MTV and prescription drugs. So like, it's all, yeah, exactly. That like kind of flow would always sort of be there. And I think also just the sort of like emotional experience of something like Pink Floyd's The Wall, where that's a movie that's just all about a dude in a hotel room on the lead up before like he's supposed to get on stage, and like we know everything he's feeling, and that character never talks in the movie. Like it's right. Just because we go into these like animated scenes and all that. So like I think I was just kind of looking to these things as like sort of like aspirational marks that we could hit, and knowing that like, well, if they could make it work, we could sort of make it work. And I think it was just a matter of really leaning into our limitations aesthetically and making it an aesthetic itself. The other big kind of guiding light was Twin Peaks: The Return, just because that's a show where, like, I mean, I think it's one of the best things David Lynch has ever made, because he didn't have a lot of money to make it. So he really turned this like low budget shoestring cable network like resource well into an aesthetic on the show, and like was also able to prioritize things. It's why like there's like some VFX shots on that show that look like really, really lo-fi, like early generation CG, and then there's the nuclear explosion that's just like the most gorgeous VFX shot that ever existed. So I really was kind of drawing on that as well, and yeah, I also just didn't micromanage any of the aesthetics that we were pulling from. I really encouraged every artist to just sort of fully lean into what their artistic vision and their voice was. You know, like I had these set ideas that I would give people and be like, okay, here's like what I'm picturing for, you know, this sequence or that. Like, I mean, specifically like our version of Gotham City, like I was really pulling from the Joel Schumacher Batman movies, that real like kind of model look. So giving that to Ben Granger and Jake Myers, who were the two artists that really pulled that whole thing together, you know, they took that as inspiration, and I think it does kind of capture that, but it also has just this whole other look to it. It just has like, because it's their thing, and I really wanted that. I wanted it to have this sort of like collectivist aesthetic that wasn't micromanaged by whatever I was picturing when we wrote it.
We first came to the film, we saw you at the Texas Theater in Dallas, and it was such a transformative experience watching this with a crowd of queer people and allies. You know, it was a powerful experience for us, and just watching the film was great, but then watching the audience reaction afterwards, and really a testament to you, their how they're drawn to you. Did you have any inkling, really, when you were putting this together, about how needed this film would be?
No, I mean, I knew how much I needed it, both in terms of just like I had, you know, when COVID like erupted in early 2020, and I don't know what this says about me, because, you know, I think some people that happened and they were like, oh shit, I gotta have kids, or oh shit, I gotta get a divorce, or oh, I'm gay, or whatever. And like for me, like I or like I'll miss my family. None of those things came into my head. I was just like, I never made a movie. Like, what the fuck? I never made a movie, and I've wanted to make a movie since I was 6 years old. Like, I knew I was a filmmaker before I knew I was a girl, and like, I got so scared, and I really knew the second that happened that was going to be the year that I started making my first feature, just because, like, I mean, just even in the pragmatic sense, nobody was hiring me to do anything. Like, I really, there was nothing being made. You know, alternative comedy really wasn't considered essential work, rightfully so. If anything, like, it's destructive to society. So, like, I knew that I would have a lot of free time. And I think, like, when that kind of clicked, I was like, what's a movie that, like, I needed around the time that I started wanting to make movies? And it was like a queer genre movie. And you know, like, I'm not the first one to do that. Like, Greg Araki made queer genre movies, like Bruce LaBruce too, you know, like he's a pornographer and you know, definitely like leans into camp and stuff, but I've always considered him like a genre filmmaker. But I really wanted to make one that was like a 2020s like genre movie, while also sort of telling this sort of like timeless coming of age story, because to me the trans experience is the perfect representation of like a coming of age story. Like trans people's journeys. I think the most frustrating thing that like when interacting with cis people who like, it's not even like the cis people who don't get it, but like the ones who like freak out or whatever, or think like our lives are so different. It's just like it's not that different. Like we all have to come of age. I think just in the case of trans people, for a lot of us, it's externalized, and it's embarrassing for that reason because we have to do it like publicly. So like to me, it was like really coming from this like place of like personal, like this is a queer movie and a genre movie that I would have needed when I was like wanting to make films, and making something that just kind of showed that. And I was never, I never could have imagined the response that I get from trans people and just anybody that like watches the movie and really gets something out of it. Like I really thought I was making a movie for myself and my friends and the people that were working on it, and that we'd like screen it once and have a few laughs and then that'd be whatever. So when that happened instantly, like that, after that first TIFF screening, the first interaction I had with somebody after a screening, it wasn't even a trans person. It was the mother of a trans woman coming up to me and saying, "Thank you for making this, because like I feel like I understand how to talk to my daughter like more now." And it was like I just fucking burst into tears because I was like, that's so crazy. Like I would have never thought that the movie could reach somebody on that level. And the fact too that like I think so many of the fans of the film and the people that are like really into the movie and now discovering not only this film but like my previous work, so many of them are like really young trans people. Like I really thought I was making something for like, you know, all the chain smoking 30-year-old trans women like me, but thank God the Zoomers really clicked for them, and that means the world. And I you know, I think I also didn't sorry, I'm so caffeinated, so I'm not letting you guys get a word in, but anyway,
We're here to listen to you.
No.
yeah, I never like thought that would happen, and just because like I'm a person who's been through a lot, and just aside from the things described on this conversation, but like I wasn't always able to show up for those conversations. Like when people would come up to me, like I've had so many people come out to me after screenings, or you know, people crying who like they're not even really able to say anything. Like they just like want to have a quick hug and sit like, and just like ground themselves in the fact that they experienced it. Like in the beginning, it was a really intense thing for me, and I really had to like show up for myself through that, because it was uncomfortable at first, and now it's my favorite part about screening the movie is getting to watch those reactions and getting to have those conversations afterwards. And especially in places like Texas, you know, we just screened the movie in oh my God, where was I? Arkansas. I just screened the movie in Arkansas. No shade against Arkansas. I've just been too many places now, so
Sure.
I can't remember. But that was a place where it was like, we screened it, and like every interaction I had afterwards, I was like, this is like incredible. Like this is why this movie should exist, is for like people who live in places like this. You know,
100%.
like I have it pretty sweet in LA, and you know, my friends in Brooklyn have it pretty sweet there. And the fact that like I get to bring this movie to places where like it's a little bit harder to be visibly trans or visibly queer is just it feels very holy and is humbling for me. I really feel good about it now.
It was just, we were talking off mic about Iraqi, and we've been diving into his filmography. But like, you know, one of the things I think that he was able to do was to capture the emotion of the time when he was putting out films and putting out queer cinema that kind of normalized the queer story. And I really do think that the People's Joker, what you've done with the People's Joker, and this is not really a question, this is me pontificating, so I apologize. But what you've really done with the People's Joker is provided a film that does what Iraqi has done, you know, for the trans community, which is normalize that story. Like you said, make it our story rather than their story. And you've also wrapped it in a bubble that is so inviting to so many people. Like, I'm not even sure if you were, I mean, again, not to speak to what you were aware of, what you weren't, but wrapping it in a comic book, in a superhero story, makes it so much more accessible to those kids that'll pass this video around, you know, and discover it throughout their own journeys. I think it's so powerful and so impressive about what you've done. And I hope that this is, you know, a start of a movement to kind of move the trans story into those normal spaces, rather than, you know, even like token inclusivity, where this is just, we don't think of this as trans stories. And again, I don't want to take anything away from those, but we think of these as stories being told. And I think what you've done is, it's just so impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's something. Yeah, it's something that is like hard for me to process at times, because it like I said, so much of it was just kind of coming from this personal place. You don't really, and I don't think anybody, when they're making anything, should really think about like the historical context or like their place in even a film movement. Like, I didn't have any trans films to really compare this to, like, as I was making it. I think like the closest thing I had was like, I was thinking a lot about Desperate Living, the John Waters movie, just because like it's a very like it's not necessarily good for queer representation. It's a very ugly queer movie, but like it reminded me more of my friends than most queer movies did and do. So like it really like those were the things I could only really look towards. And you know, it's made, I think, with that in mind, like sometimes it's made you know, because there have been a number of trans movies that have come out this year, aside from mine. Like I saw the TV Glow and Stress Positions, and Alice Mayo McKay has 2 movies out this year, because she's just like a Terminator. I'm just obsessed with her. She's my favorite director. So sometimes like I'll get asked like sort of these questions that are like in the context of a trans film movement or something, which also kind of reminds me of the Greg Araki thing of just like the new queer cinema thing, and like thinking about how like irritated he must have felt at times when it's like he's not hanging out with like all those other filmmakers and stuff. And like at first when I'd get asked the question, I'd get really like, I guess, kind of defensive, just because I'd be like, well, I don't even know these people. Like I'm like, Alice is one of my best friends, but like that happened after I made the movie, and after like, you know, we met at like Outfest last year and got really close after that. So sometimes I'd get really defensive about it and kind of just be like, well, we're not like having meetings at Jane Schoenbrun's house or whatever and like coming up with a trans agenda. It's literally like a quote that I've said. But I think now it's like again, it's like if I really put myself in the shoes of somebody who is just starting out, it would give me so much hope. Just finally seeing that there's visibility and opportunity in indie and genre spaces for us, because that didn't exist when I started making this movie. Like we're all going to the World's Fair wasn't even out yet when I started making this film. Like there was no like context for what like millennial trans cinema could look like. Or in Alice's case, Zoomer trans cinema, because she's a wonderkind, definitely the Mozart out of all of us. And like I really think, yeah, like I can look at that now in this like place of gratitude where I'm just like, I'm so glad that like up and coming filmmakers have all of us to really like point to and go like, okay, they're doing this, so I can do that. Especially in a world where like, I mean, it's very hard to like get into the industry even if you're not trans. Like it's just a really in so many ways like digital film or digital cinema itself really did kind of democratize filmmaking, but it also made it so much more accessible. The landscape is just so much bigger. You know, I think I was coming into like the indie scene really with this like sort of like warped vision of like early 90s indie cinema and like what it looked like for like Kevin Smith and like Quentin Tarantino and stuff. And it's like, I don't even know if it looked like that, the way we think about that. I don't even know if that really was what it was like then. Like, I think that might have just been like Miramax PR to some degree of how like accessible indie film was. Like, it's really hard, but I have a lot of hope. Like I don't really buy the whole like movies are dying or cinema's dying thing. Like I've just met too many filmmakers in the last year who are making really fucking cool shit that I'm nothing but hopeful for like the future of indie cinema and genre cinema.
Oh yeah, so that kind of leads into my next question, because I know you've said that before. So how these, and not necessarily even trans stories, but how do you feel like, I mean, like, are these people just making them in a guerrilla style filmmaking? Like, we always have the question within ourselves of like, how do these smaller adult oriented stories get based? And then is, you know, having this one under your belt, is it going to alter how you approach future projects? Does this make it any easier for you? Or is this just like giving you confidence? Like, I'm okay, I've made the People's Joker. Now all of these things that I have lined up, I can do whatever I want.
I think so. You know, it's funny. Thanks for phrasing the question that way, because sometimes people will be like, it'll never get better than this, right? And I'm like, better than like the hardest 4 years of my goddamn fucking life? I hope it gets better. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, it's definitely opened some doors for me. You know, I have a film that is in development right now called Dead Name that I got paid to write. And that's a cosmic horror coming of age movie about doppelgangers and cults and stuff. And that's a movie that I had that idea had been in the oven for like almost a decade. Like, I was pitching that as a TV show like a few years back, and it was just like to deaf ears. Like, people are like, what the like, we don't want to like make a show about goddess worship and, you know, like Freemasonry, and B, like, there's too many trans people in this. Like, we can't do this at this point. So like, I think just the fact that like I'm getting paid to write that is really helpful. Like, and like makes me hopeful. And, you know, I still got to pitch stuff, but I've gotten attached to another script that I didn't write that's like a horror heist movie that's pretty cool, and hopefully I can talk about at some point. You know, like, I think the other thing it wasn't just like opportunities that like came out of this experience, but like I learned a lot. And like, I think the two things I learned the most were like, I really need to take care of myself, like in this process, because I burnt myself out so many times making the People's Joker. Like, it really it could have killed me. Like, I think it could have, just based off of like how like alcoholically I was making the movie at times, and like I sort of also would lie to myself and be like, well, this movie's my therapy. This is helping me understand things. And it's like, filmmaking is not a substitute for therapy. It's not a substitute for like gender health. It's not a substitute for drug abuse treatment. It is just filmmaking. So like whatever I do next, like I think I'm gonna really try to just make my priority like taking care of myself and my body and my brain, so that I can keep making things. And that's like also just like an example I want to set, just because sometimes I see these no shade, but I meet people after screening sometimes that are watching the movie and they're just like on so much goddamn ketamine or acid or whatever, and I'm just like, oh my god, like what have I done? Like what type of person have I emboldened by being this publicly messy? Like I really want to show that like when we make art that is this vulnerable and honest and ambitious, like we've got to take care of ourselves. And along those lines too, like whatever I do next, like I have a few things that I'm working on because I don't want to put all my energy into one thing like I did with The People's Joker. Like I don't really know what my next movie is. I have a general idea it'll be like one of these things, but you know, like I have these two things that I'm writing with studios, and then I have my other ideas that like, okay, well if those don't get made, like I have a, you know, like I just started writing a romantic comedy about cannibalism that is 0% autobiographical, just for the record, as to not get wrapped up in any Army Hammer stuff. Yeah. But yeah, you cast a wide net. I think that's
the best, I guess, right?
Yes, yeah.
You've mentioned, so The People's Joker is a kind of superhero comic book genre film, and you've mentioned horror a couple times, and you know we've seen films like I Saw the TV Glow and We're All Going to the World's Fair, and even I guess you know Cuckoo to a certain extent, and how these genre films also act as like living, breathing metaphors, or I guess not in a negative term, but like a Trojan horse, right? To carry these other ideas. I don't know. I mean, do you kind of see things that way? Like it's easier to tell this story kind of in a slant way or through that visual metaphor? Or are these kind of really like reclamation projects of the genre itself?
Well, I mean, speaking only for The People's Joker, like I know it really was like on some level, like I really needed a queer comic book movie to exist. Like I because of how like queer coded Joker itself is, like it was just like, this is actually like upsetting that there hasn't been anything like this yet. So like there was a little bit of reclamation there. And I don't know, like I think as far as just like general genre cinema goes, like I just think it's more interesting to say something through characters and archetypes than it is to like, you know, sort of make something that's just somebody sitting there and like telling you how you're supposed to feel about things, which is unfortunately like what a lot of movies are like, even movies that like pretend to be genre movies, or horror movies or whatever. Like it's I don't think you should ever like really be seeing the thesis statement of like a filmmaker through whatever they're making. You should feel that emotion and maybe like what they're saying about themselves or their family or society or whatever. And I just think genre has always been a place for that. You know, you even think about something like Alien, like the original Alien, as really being just this like kind of like Lovecraftian, like anti-corporate commentary about like sexual assault and birthrights and stuff. Like all that stuff is there. I don't know if Ridley Scott was like super aware of it, or Dan O'Bannon, and the other guy. But I like think they, on some level, it's like, I don't know. I think there's like a magic to it. It's why like I really do think of like not only like comic book movies as myth, but just genre as filmmaking is sort of like the closest thing we have to modern myth. Because if you are just making a movie and you're making a genre movie, like I always think about this quote that Quentin Tarantino said once, where he was like, "If you love movies so much, you will have no choice but to make a good one." And I think that's really true, especially like when it comes to genre movies. If you're really like just focusing on the fact that you're like, I want to tell a story within this voice, and I want to honor the characters in an authentic way and make something that is just enjoyable for people to like sit down and watch for hopefully 90 minutes. Like every movie should just be 90 minutes long, in my opinion.
Right.
Or 4 hours. A movie should either be 90 minutes or like
90 minutes or like right.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I don't know. I think like it just makes it a lot more accessible, and yeah, I want to see more like queer people do that. I want to see more people of color like work in that space. Like I just remember like when Get Out came out and like Jordan started like making like horror movies, I was just like, Jesus, like thank God. Like this finally fucking exists. Like it's crazy that it took that long. But you know, I really see that something that's gonna hopefully continue.
Shifting focus a little bit. I was reading in your AMA and on Reddit about your love for Neil Breen, and I was wondering, have you ever heard of a filmmaker named Douglas Burke out of USC? He made a film called Surfer Teen Confronts Fear.
No, with that, I'm adding it to my watch list right now. Surfer Teen Confronts Fear.
Yeah, we'll connect. Maybe I can connect with Frank through Altered Innocence, and I'll get you a link to watch the film. But and again, I know this is a complete, but it's this professor out of USC. He's a physics professor who was filming his son. He'd taken all his B-roll of his film Surfing, and he was going to enter it into like local short film competitions, but decided to put the narrative around it. And it's got this metaphysical journey that meets the Bourne Identity, and it's all about his son, who clearly does not want to be in this movie. And the plot role is that the son is a surfer. He's the surfing teen who has crashed out on a big wave and no longer surfs. And he's fishing one day, and he catches a reincarnation of his father, who sets him along a path to find his heart again to surf. And then it turns into this like espionage military movie. It is bonkers in all the best way. And if you love Neil Breen, definitely seek out Surfer Teen Confronts Fear.
I'm sold. Yeah, like it definitely sounds like it has that Neil Breen thing where like I don't know, like sometimes whenever I hear people talk about Neil, I'm like, are you watching the same movie? Because like to me it's like there's this real like psychedelic like esoteric quality to all his stuff that's very like, it gets me thinking about like what actually is reality. Like and that's what this also sounds like. Please send it my way. I'd love to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Anything else? Go ahead.
No, I mean, thank you so much for talking to us. Oh, you know, I did have one more question. Sorry.
She thought she was going to get out.
I know. I think it's a short one.
This
is more of a this is more of a physical media kind of. But so you did the interactive Blu-ray menu structure, and you have a VHS release for that. How involved were you in the VHS? Because I'm really impressed that they put out a 4:3 pan and scan VHS of The People's Joker.
I panned and scanned it myself. It was really like working with Altered Innocence on our physical media was like it was really the thing that like when I met Frank Jaffe, who is Altered Innocence, like Altered Innocence is just Frank, and that's it. Like we
It was so
and,
surprising just to get like an email just from Frank. Yeah, it's great.
Oh yeah,
Sorry,
no,
didn't
he
mean
doesn't have. It's. I wish he'd hire some people. Like it really, but it was the thing that made me want to work with him. Was just like, here's this like, it's like a human interaction. It's not. I don't have to talk through somebody else. And when we met, because we met, right after the first time I screened the movie publicly again, which was at Outfest 2023, and he like texted me or DM'd me or something that next day and was like, hey, let's meet up. And, like, I want to talk to you about The People's Joker. And when I got that message, I was like, oh God, like, I'm not going to get my hopes up, just because that was like, I don't know, the 20th time I had gotten a message like that from some distributor. And he was one where it was like, I was already familiar with his films and like, was like, this is a place where this movie could really work. And I showed up to that lunch and he was really like, I think we could do this. Like I'm not afraid of Warner Brothers and I don't think the theaters are, so let's just do this. And he also gave me this like stack of DVDs. And it was like, he gave me Dressed in Blue, he gave me Wild Boys, Knife and Heart,
yeah.
Wild Tigers I've known, like all these like wonderful queer films. And just looking at the DVDs and like holding them, I was like, I had this just like wave of intuition and like warmth come over me, because I was just like, this is somebody who actually fucking cares about physical media and film, which is not, I mean, it's just not that much of a thing, unfortunately, in film distribution. Like a lot of people, I had so many people approach me that were just like, I can get you on a streamer. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure we could.
Right.
Like, I'm not worried about that. I want this to play in theaters. I want to make VHSs. I want to make DVDs. Like, I want it on VOD. I want to fucking open up Apple and see my fucking beautiful face on there.
Yeah.
And like watching, getting handed just this stack of media, I was just like, this is somebody who's going to help us like actually legitimize this. And I don't even really know that I realized what I was signing up for when I worked with him. And I mean, this is probably way too candid, but whatever, that's just my brand. Like I definitely have complained a lot about how much I've had to do at times. But at the same time, I'm like, it's so cool because I've gotten to have so much creative control over how we package these things. Like, I remember specifically for our Blu-ray, he was like, I usually do these booklets and stuff. Like, what do you want to do for that? And I was like, I want to write an essay just about everything that's happened so far, and I want to load it up with art, like original art, both from the movie and like fan art and just new stuff, and it'll kind of be packaged like a zine. And he just says, okay. Like he's just cool with that. Or, when we met with Liz Purcell, was somebody who we brought in to help with the DVD extras, and she really like, God, just what a valuable voice to have, just even as like a creative voice in there, because it was like her idea where she was like, this movie needs like a DVD menu. Like you need to do some sort of dumb interactive DVD menu. It only because like, oh, my computer's about to die. I've got to change location. Sorry. So she was like, let's do like a crazy like 25-minute Blu-ray menu and stuff like that. So like I just got to shoot that in my apartment. And all of the special features were very like tailor-made and that stuff. And I don't know, like working with Altered Innocence has just been great on that level, Like we did, the last thing I'll just drone on about is like we did this one night only virtual screening a few months ago where really the aim was just to like screen the movie just for people to watch at home, because like it hadn't been available yet. It was before it was on VOD and stuff. And like I was very adamant that I wanted it to be structured around a wedding where I'm marrying the Joker. And which is a dumb idea. It's a bad idea, actually. Like, it was a really confusing piece of marketing for a lot of people. But Frank was just like, yeah, let's do it. So I shot a fake wedding where I married a Joker blow-up doll. And like, Frank Jaffe gave me money to do that. That's nuts. Like, it's really just like a match made in heaven. And you know, I can't stress enough for people like the VHS and the Blu-ray, like it's really worth picking those things up, just because like we really packaged them with a lot of goodies. And I think it can really serve as just like a beacon for what will hopefully be just this kind of continued resurgence that we're sort of seeing of like physical media appreciation. Like we're not the first ones to really do that, but we're grateful to be like a part of it and to be doing so much like silly experimental shit in the process of doing that too.
Yeah. Jason, anything else that we need to ask Vera? Or
No, I just wanted to say again, thank you for your time. We are actually screening The People's Joker on the 28th with the Real House Foundation and the Film Club. We've got 2 local organizations. One's called LGBTQ Saves, and one is Fence Place. Fence Place is a trans organization here in Fort Worth. So we're going to have a panel after the movie's over. So thank you for providing us the opportunity to speak to this, and to introduce this film to another audience. And that's what we were so excited about when we saw it at the Texas Theater. We're like, oh, we've got to get this. Is not normally something in our wheelhouse, but we were like, we got to get this as far as like showing first run films like this. But we need to do something with this because it's an important film, and we really want to introduce as many people as we can to it. So thank you for your time, and really this has been wonderful, and thank you for a wonderful film.
We think it's a necessary and vital piece of art. And you've been so generous today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vera. It's been really wonderful to talk to you.
I love the sound of my own voice, so the pleasure's all mine. Cool. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.